Okay, today we're going to go over how to use ControlNet with SD1.5 and SDXL in ForgeUI. It's pretty easy to use ControlNet from like a technical standpoint, but getting it to do exactly what you want and when and what models and when and what preprocessors to use to make it work the way you want it to can be a little challenging. So we're just going to go over generally how to use it and then some tips and tricks. Okay, first of all, I'm going to show you how to use ControlNet and then I'm going to show you how to install ControlNet. Okay, so when you first open ForgeUI and if you haven't used ControlNet before, it'll look quite a bit like this when you first open it. Now, the main use of ControlNet is to control the output of your generation. So I'm just going to give a quick example. I am going to generate this prompt right here. I'm just going to generate this real quick. Okay, so this is a decently fine image. I haven't done upscaling or anything like that, but I mean, this is a good image, but it may not be what I want it to be. So I'm going to use ControlNet now. Scroll down here, and we're going to go over how to install these things and how to get them on your computer, but it's relatively straightforward. I'm going to use depth map. In the case of depth map, I'm going to go ahead and just use depth anything v2 right now. Now, the program itself will install preprocessors for you because the preprocessors are part of this extension. And so when you decide to use a preprocessor the very first time, it'll auto install the preprocessor part. But the model part, you have to install yourself. I'm using SDXL right now. So I'm going to go into this little blue box here and hit refresh. And then I'm going to find this one that says Diffusion PyTorch Model Pro Max. This is the all-in-one model for SDXL. SD1.5 has different models for each type. See how this one says ControlNet 11 models depth. I'll go over where to get these, but see this one has depth. So if I was doing depth for SD1.5, I would pick this one, but this one right here is the one for all of SDXL. So I'm going to click that and make sure it's selected. So I'm on depth anything. We're not going to worry about these settings right now. And now I have all my settings correct, but I'm missing a very key component to how to make ControlNet work. I need an image. So I'm going to go ahead and select this one right here. I'm going to grab that image and I'm going to drag it into this little spot right here. And you can see how it appeared there. So now this is the image that my ControlNet is being based off of. So the first thing I'm going to do to make sure that, you know, the baseline stuff is working is I'm going to make sure that I have this enabled. I'm going to have allow preview on so I can see what it's doing. I'm not going to worry about these other two options right now. So I have enabled allow preview depth anything, and then my SDXL version. I'm going to hit this button right here. This is going to run the preprocessor on this image, and it's going to give me this image. This is the depth map that it made for this image, right? Now, choosing a different preprocessor will result in a different depth map, and that may be advantageous in certain times for certain things, right? Okay, so I have the depth map made. Now, to make ControlNet work, you don't actually have to hit this. This is just so you can get a preview of the image, right? If I didn't have allow preview on, this wouldn't even appear. This process right here runs automatically as part of the whole process. So it just does it ahead of time so you can get an idea of like, oh, okay, well, how is the depth map looking? So now I have it on. I have all of the stuff ready to go. I'm not going to change anything in my prompt. I'm just going to hit generate again. Okay, you can see now that the image has changed a lot since the last image. It is essentially used the ControlNet that I put in as blueprint or a map for what to make the image look like. Now, another interesting thing is you can see in my prompt, there is nothing about skulls in it, right? And in the image that I put in the preprocessor, there are skulls on the ground. Now, in this depth map image, you can't really tell that they're skulls, but this depth map image is a little bit more detailed than it visually looks in this preview. And so stuff that was in the image of the depth map transferred over more than it looks like it would, right? So these things right down here mostly look like skulls. That's something to be aware of when you're doing a depth map, that just because all the details aren't in the depth map or visually easy to see in the depth map doesn't mean that they won't cross over. So when you're selecting an image to use, it's important to kind of gauge what you want to use and when. In this case, sort of completely re-altering this image is something that I wanted to do, right? But you can also see that there are some things that are in this image that didn't transfer over at all. Right? The upper background, because it's a depth map, the upper background didn't really come into the image at all. There are settings down here. There are settings down here to sort of affect what gets seen and what gets looked at and that kind of stuff as well. But also you can just try a different way of using ControlNet. So for instance, I'm going to go ahead and pick line art this time, and I'm going to select realistic. I'm going to select my same Diffusion PyTorch model Pro Max one because I'm using SDXL still. I'm going to hit the run preprocessor. Okay, now this image has much more detailed information from like our visual look at this image because it's line art, right? It's got some stuff at the top. It's got some stuff down at the bottom. You can actually see the skulls here. Now, interestingly, line art, because it doesn't know depth to it, the output of the image might not be as good or what we want, because just line art doesn't tell the model as much information about the overall composition of the image. So we're going to go ahead and run this again with this new ControlNet. Okay, so now we ran that, and you can see there are some details, some parts in the upper part of the image that came through this time. And the skulls still kind of made it through, and this overall looks maybe a little bit better for our uses, right? It's hard to say, but this looks pretty good. And so trying different preprocessors for different applications is important. Okay, let's go over how to install the ControlNet models. So again, I showed you the interface down here, but let's show you how to install the ControlNet model. I'll put 2 links in the description for where to get these. The first one for SDXL is going to look like this, and you just want the Diffusion PyTorch model Pro Max safe tensors, and you'll hit the little download file button right there. Next, for SD1.5, there is a CiviTAI model page that these models seem to work good for me. We're going to go with those ones. Now, in the case of the SD1.5 models, there are 2 files. So if you scroll down on the ControlNet model for the SD1.5 ones, you'll see there are 2 files here. One says ControlNet, and then the other one says config. Those 2 files, you need both of those files, and they both need to go in the same place. The link will take you to the main file, and then you just select which one of the models you want. So you don't have to download them all if you don't think you're going to use them all, or you can download them all. It's up to you. But essentially, all of these are individual models, whereas this one is sort of an all-in-one model that functions for all of SDXL models, whereas these ones are individual ones. So if you want to use depth, you have to download depth. If you want to use line art, you have to download line art. And then once you've downloaded them, you'll go to your Forge directory, go into WebUI, go into models, and then don't worry about the ControlNet preprocessor ones. It'll auto install those. You're going to go to the regular ControlNet, and you're just going to put them in this file right here. You can see that I've got ControlNet 11 models depth safe tensors. That is the SD1.5 depth model. And then there's a text file that says ControlNet 11 models depth, and it's a YAML file. You need both of these to make each individual SD1.5 ControlNet model work. Okay, that's pretty much it for how to use ControlNet in ForgeUI. Thanks for watching. It'd be really cool if you liked and subscribed. It helps a lot with discoverability. Thank you.